I saw a great need to teach my teachers. And one of my students, through when I was out in Valley Acres, one of the people that heard me preach out there and teach, I was a young person's pastor, the youth pastor out there. And if you can imagine me teaching children, with all the wherever they put me, I teach it. I'll tell you. And I was teaching God's eternal purpose to the little kids on their level. Anyway, he saw this. I gave him a set of lessons that I had of this. He said, "Oh, this is great." He said, "These are all the questions that I ever wanted to ask or know about the Bible, almost in here, just about everything." There are more lessons that I could probably write about 10 more lessons and put it in here, which I've never done. But these are some of the basic things that, if you're going to be a teacher and teach classes, these are the things that your children or even your adults that you're teaching are going to ask you. These are things you need to know about. All right? And then on the table of contents, turn there to the table of contents. Anyway, this guy surprised me and gave this to me for a Christmas present by typesetting this. And he did this. And it was great. And his last name was Smith. I can't even remember what his first name was. But the first thing is we're going to talk about the Christian doctrine. What Christian doctrine is. Now, one of the things that we're going to study today is the doctrine of giving. All right? And tithing. Well, if you'll look down here, you'll see it down further. The New Testament giving. That's on page 42 of chapter 26. Lesson number 26. See, we're going to go through that. It'll probably be a year from now when we get there, or quite a few weeks. But because I'm going to try to do this class in 32 classes. That's a lot. But there's two, like when I do the tapes and things, it's 2 volumes, that is 32. I might do it even less than that. I'm going to try to go through it, but I'm going to give you time because you really need to learn these things. I'll never forget what Tony told me a few years ago when we started getting in the Sunday school class together. I was going to skip over something. She said, "Don't do that." Because this is what made a difference in our life. So I want to give plenty of time to teaching you this. And one of the first things, and it's going to introduce you into this class today, and we'll come back and study it some more, is Christian doctrine. A lot of churches, to be unoffensive to the masses, say that we don't teach doctrine. That's impossible. It's absolutely impossible not to teach doctrine in any church, because I don't care what church you are, you've got to have some doctrine. If you got a preacher up there preaching, that's a certain amount of doctrine to get a guy up there, because then you believe in having a preacher, don't you? So that is doctrine. Now let's go back and look at some of these terms here. We're just going to get introduced into it, then I'm going to go into this other thing. The meaning of the terms. All right. Hannah, could you read that for us?
A Christian, a person professing a belief in Jesus as the Christ, or in the religion based on the teachings of Jesus.
Okay, so that's what a Christian is. All right. The name Christian means Christ-like, by the way. If you want to write that out there. And number 2, Christy, can you read that one for me?
We commonly correct this to read, one who professes a belief in Jesus, follows him in scriptural baptism, patterns of his life after Christ, and can covenant himself with the New Testament church.
All right, so now we're starting to specific. A lot of people, you come up to them and say, and they'll tell you, "I'm a Christian." And you talk to them a little bit, Brother Bill, and you've done this 1,000 times, I'm sure, and you find out that they aren't Christians. They're a Christian because they're not a Buddhist. They're a Christian because they're not a Muslim. They just classify themselves. And you ask them, "Well, where do you go to church?" "Well, I go to church, the Valley Baptist Church." "Well, I go there too. I don't see you." "Well, we go to church there on Christmas and Easter." Well, Brother, have you? How have you? This is it. I mean, this is their church. They're, as far as they're concerned, they're a member of this church, and they go here on Christmas and Easter, and they're Christians. And they say, "Well, when were you saved?" Well, I don't know about that. What do you mean by that? When were you baptized? Well, member of church, or what church are you a member of? And then it starts specifying things. It starts changing things, doesn't it? All right. Then you start specifying the Mass from the real Christian. Okay. Number B, Brother Norm.
Something taught, teachings.
Doctrine. Something taught, teachings. Okay? The Greek word is didache, or didache. There was a book called didache that some of the early apostles wrote. It's called the didache. You can find it in some places. What they taught, it's the teachings. And what it does, it's gone through the Bible as the writers there saw the different doctrines of the Bible, and they talked about the same doctrines that we have on our table of contents here. The Bible, God, the Trinity, the Holy Spirit, Jesus Christ. And we need to be very specific about the things that we teach so we know so people will know what we believe. And they say, "Well, I don't believe that. Why do you believe that?" Well, now you're going to have a reason. You can go back to this book and you can say, "Aha, this guy asked me this question. I can go back and see what the Bible's answer to it is." Because this is based upon the Bible. Okay? A lot of teachings different. Something taught. Okay, Brother Norm. Number 2 there.
Some say it is what narrow-minded religionists teach that cause hard feelings.
Mm-hmm. That's why they say that their churches don't teach doctrine. Number 3, Levite.
Doctrine is literally teaching Greek.
All right. Teaching. The doctrine. Teaching. That's what doctrine is. Doctrine is teaching. All right? That's what it means. If you get a group of people together, you've got to teach them something, don't you?
When the Bible says make disciples, I mean, this is what teaching people.
Yeah. Make habitual learners. That mathetes is the word disciple. All right? We're going to get into that. Number C. Tony, have you got that one?
Christian doctrine.
All
the
right.
teachings of a person professing a belief in Jesus as the Christ.
All right. Christian doctrine. And then number 2.
The teachings of that religion that is based on the true teachings of Jesus Christ.
All right. Now, Roman numeral 2. Susan.
The purpose of Christ's doctrine
All right.
is not to prove that Christianity is true. It is to establish and clarify what true Christians believe or what the Bible teaches about specific doctrines.
All right. The purpose of Christian doctrine is not to prove that Christianity is true. The Bible does that. You know, really, you don't have to defend God. God has done a real good job defending himself. Believe it or not. I mean, that may sound like, nonsense to us as we live in the world today. But God has done a real good job defending himself. We just have to know the material. You have to know the material. All right? And then you can present the material because the Bible does defend itself. All right? Teachings of a person. It is not to prove that Christianity is true. It is to establish and clarify what true Christians believe and what the Bible teaches about specific teachings or doctrines. Okay, number 3. Bill, got that?
The need of Christian doctrine. Most people feel there is no need for doctrine. The desire to confine religion to a soft soul or go along compromise with one is as good as another. Philosophy, most are quick to say that no doctrine is preached at their church. This attitude itself became a doctrine, one that is foreign to the New Testament.
All right. What are What is most of the New Testament written about?
Jesus Christ teaching.
About the teachings of Jesus Christ. All right. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. Brother, have you got one of these for yourself?
No, I do, but I'll borrow one today.
All right.
And I'll borrow one of these.
And these are some good things here. You can borrow one of them too. You don't even have to give it back, brother. We're introducing ourselves into our lesson for today, and we're on Christian doctrine. And then when we get on that, we're going to bounce right into our lesson. Okay? We do have a lesson, number 26, that is on New Testament giving, but I'm going to give you an introduction to that in just a minute. Christian doctrine. All right? Number 3, the need of Christian doctrine. All right? And then B. All right. Who wants B? Joanne?
Man's nature necessitates doctrine.
All right. Why does man's nature necessitate doctrine? We talk about the need of teaching doctrine. Why, Roger thought it was so needful to teach doctrine that we had a whole lesson on what the Bible teaches, didn't we? The doctrines that the Bible teaches. Because a lot of times you get people in churches and you have people pulling apart and going different directions, don't you? They're going different.
Especially a big church like this.
Yeah. And you need to get people kind of going in the same way, in the same road. And that's one of the reasons for teaching doctrine. It says most people don't feel doctrine is important, but look what it says here. Man's nature necessitates doctrine. Okay, go ahead, Joanne.
One, doctrine appeals to intellect.
All right, that's your mind, isn't it? Now, we studied 5 words for mind in the Wednesday class here a while back, actually even 6, if you want to throw thelemantos in there. 5 different words in Greek for mind. 6 if you include thelemantos. And every one of them is a different look at it. All right? Well, the Bible actually shows all of these things, and our mind is a very magnificent thing that God has created in it. Yeah, isn't the mind magnificent? Sometimes it can go wrong, things can go wrong, you can get sick mentally as well as you can physically. All right? But the mind is a magnificent machine, isn't it? And God wants you to use it. He does. God wants you to use your mind. Okay, go ahead, Joanne.
Man is intelligent. He will think about religion. What he thinks about his religion is his doctrine.
That's right. Okay, number 3.
There can be no such thing as religion without doctrine.
Now, people may say that. We've heard this in our discipleship meetings on Tuesday night. Roger brought up here probably a year ago now that many churches, many Baptist churches are dropping the name Baptist because they don't want to offend people. And he said there was really a survey done by people that study this type of thing, and he found out that it didn't matter really what you put up there if you drop the name Baptist up there, because some people might go there because it says Baptist, and other people, yeah, that's right, brother. That it also is a drawing factor, not so much as to shun people. All right.
If you were going into a town and you saw this church, you don't know what you're walking into.
That's right. We have that down here on Olive Drive, not only. This was the First Baptist Church in Bakersfield. Now it's Olive Drive Church or something. To be acceptable. To be acceptable to others. I think we ought to be honest and say what we believe and say what we are. Okay? That's honesty, isn't it? In the Bible, that's one of the first things, that's what the Golden Rule teaches. That's one of the basic things. We need to be honest. Okay, go ahead, Joanne.
The 3 aspects of true religion: intellectual element, emotional element, and moral element. True religion is a mixture of these 3 elements, but an excess of any one of these elements can cause a religious abnormality.
All right. Can you give me an example of a group of people that have gone intellectually array? Their religion?
Christian Science.
Christian Science. There we go. All right. Another one.
Pentecostal?
No. That's not intellectual.
Not intellectual, but it's...
That's not intellectual at all. Okay, we're talking about the intellectual element now. Well, it isn't. We're going to get down to that one in just a minute. All right. How can you go intellectually array? Jehovah's Witnesses say that they teach the Bible, don't they? But they twisted it up. And it is a religion of intellect only. There's nothing else in intellect. Okay?
You know, the independent Baptist churches, some of them are very studious and they're very into the Bible. I mean, very, but they have first and second degree separations. And what they're doing, they're separating the world from themselves. And what they're doing is pulling back into a smaller and smaller group. But they are an intellect.
It's an intellectual. Yeah. Okay, we talked about the intellectual element. You can even go that. You can get truth. Truth, you can go even astray with truth. Did you know that? Super orthodox, where you just close your doors and you put a steel barrier around everybody. And you say, we got the truth, let's keep it, and let's don't do anything, don't even share it. Well, we have the truth. All right? How about emotional? Well, I think you were fast on that one. That is absolutely true, isn't it? All right, pure emotion, isn't it? I don't care, and I've talked to some of those people, and they said, well, what the Bible teaches about this, and I'll tell them what the Bible teaches about this. It says, but that's not what I feel. I don't want to feel. So what are you doing? You're ruling your intellect with your feelings. Okay?
It's very dangerous because Satan can come in an emotional state very easily.
Satan does come in an emotional state. And true religion is their emotion. That's a perfect balance of it. Now, how about morality?
Catholics.
Well,
If you can drink and cuss at church, you can go to the bar. I can't think of it.
well, that's more a doctrinal, an intellectual thing, brother. They have intellectually gone astray.
And it'd be
Mormons are
satanic
moral.
church.
There you
Mormons are
go.
real.
Mormons are the moral issue here. Okay.
Two of them come yesterday.
Okay, moral issue. All right. So we see the moral issue, and basically they're morally a pretty good people.
Yeah.
But the moral issue and the family issue is the only issue they have. There's nothing else there. When you go back to the Bible and start studying the Bible, where the Bible goes array to them, they say, well, I'm a good person. All right, I'm a good person. I mean, we're religious. Seventh-day Adventists, there's another intellectual group. There's intellectual. All right? See, you can put these and put them down. And they are also moral. They're intellectual and moral. But there's basically no emotion there. You know, I have seen Brother John get excited when he's up there leading that orchestra. Because there is an emotional element in that, isn't it, brother? That is worship. There is emotion in it, and it takes you. There's a lot of things you have to study. It's a lot of work to get a master's degree in music. It sure is. That's a lot of work.
You know, Jim, emotion also is relevant to personality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people are just naturally more stoic than others, and some are just...
Races of people. Races of people. Some of them... Have you ever seen a poker-faced Indian? That's what my mother used to say. That I could say something and just say it like I really meant it jokingly, and you'd never know it was a joke. I tease a lot like that, just Be straight-faced about it. Poker face. You can't tell what they're really, because they're hiding their real emotions. Well, intellectual, emotional, and moral element. True religion is a mixture of these three elements. An excess in any one of these elements can cause abnormality. All right? You can become too emotional. Can you become too moral? Give me a historical people that were too moral. Is that possible? What? The Pharisees. The Pharisees were so moral that the law of Moses was not enough. They invented their own laws. Now, what do you think about that? More moral than God's law was? And I'm going to tell you something. In this area of morality, human nature is more severe on each other than that God ever is.
Yeah.
Did you know that? God forgives, but have you ever seen anybody that just beat your head over with morality, and sometimes they were as immoral as they could be, hiding it? That's what you call hypocrisy. A lot of these, and Jesus, the whole Matthew chapter 23, 21, 22, 23, and 24, you know what Jesus is talking about in those chapters? He's condemning the religious element in his day. Woe unto you. Woe. You know that word? It's in Greek. It's uah. Uah. Just say that with me. Uah.
Wow.
That sounds terrible. It means calamity. That means destruction. It is a frightening word. It's what you call an onomatopoeic word. A word that sounds exactly like it is. When Jesus cast the demon out of that man, you know what the sound was? Uah! Again, the same word. Calamity, destruction, fear.
You know, God loves us and He wants us to be at ease and happy, not uptight and wondering if we're going to be obedient in all moments.
God is a father to you, isn't He? God is your father. No other group of people in the Old Testament ever knew God as Father. He was the creator in the Old Testament. He was the powerful. He was the lightning and the thunder, the Shekinah glory that just made you tremble. And in His presence, you were to fear. There is, the Bible says the beginning of the fear of God is what? Obedience and what? Wisdom. Fear is the beginning of wisdom with God. Yes, we should fear God. But once you're His child, should you fear your mother and your father in this world? Those are the guys you run home to when the world beats you up. Huh? It should have been that way all the way through life, isn't it? The world beats you up and you run home to Mama and Daddy. All right? Because they're the protectors. That's the way God is. He's your protector. You know that? Just think about it. He's your protector. You run home. You don't have anything to fear. That's Daddy.
Jim, on fear, as it's related to that, it always has seemed to me like a misinterpretation in the English language, because fear is, being subordinate and trembling and that sort of thing. But to me, that has never been that connotation there.
Well,
fear the Lord, it's just because you're in His refuge.
Yes. When you're not saved, you fear God. You ought to.
You ought to.
When you're saved, you reverence God and you desire to be in His presence. Because that is your refuge. Read the first psalm, the second psalm, the third psalm, the fourth psalm, the fifth psalm. Read these psalms. It's talking about the enemy world and the protector God. I used to go down, I had to fight that court system down there for a long time over my daughter, and I'd go in there and I'd open up my Bible and I'd start reading those first 5 Psalms of the Bible and praying, God, what David prayed here, please come here. I really need you. I need you here today. You need to redo what you did here in my life, because I got problems down here. And God does. He is our refuge. Now, give and live. We're right up here to this point now in our class. All right? The Bible is a book about giving. And that's what we were just talking about, wasn't it? God giving us refuge. And we ought to imitate God, too. The word believe appears 272 times in the Bible. The words translated prayer or pray is 371 times in the Bible. The word love appears 714 times in the Bible. And the word give appears 2,162 times in the Bible. Now look at that. That's a lot, isn't it?
It'd be interesting to know what the Quran has on this comparatively.
I guarantee you that they expect more from their people than God expects from them. Gardner Ted Armstrong used to ask for a double and a triple tithe. And we're a Church of God. The Mormons, I believe, ask for a double tithe. And then you have to do other certain things. God asks for a tithe. Now that's His, by the way. That's God's. It's already His. It's not yours. Okay? If you're going to give anything to God, you've got to give it above that. If you're going to be a giver. All right? I'm jumping along our way ahead here. Giving makes us more like God. All right? For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. Jesus is the greatest giver of all time. The Lord owns everything. Now, I've said this several times in the Wednesday night class and sometime on Sunday morning class. God is the creator of all things. He is sovereign over all things. What does the word sovereign mean?
Overseer?
Not over.
What's sovereign mean? Sovereign.
Authority over all things?
He has authority. Right?
He's the boss.
He's the boss. That's the word. He's the boss. God is sovereign. He owns everything, and He can do with it whatever He wants to with it, and whatever He does with it is right. Okay? But He's different than people. There's a lot of people say to their children, some bad parents would say, I don't care what you think, I don't care whether you think it's right or wrong, I'm right even if I'm wrong. God is never like that. God never asked you to do anything that's not good for you. Never. Not even giving. God never asked you to do anything that is not good for you. He wants the best for you. Now, God is sovereign. He created man in His blood-flowing, shadow-casting likeness and His intellectual likeness, and we were talking about this in our Doctrines of the Bible. Intellect is a very important thing. Emotion is a very important thing. Morality is very important. There is a blend of all of those things that we need to be like. But you know what? That you can't do that, any of those things, unless you do this. Because this is important. This is one of the lessons in the Doctrines of the Bible. Christian giving. All right? God is sovereign. So therefore He made man in His sovereign image too. What does that word mean? You can do what you want to do. We're sovereign, all right. Now God, He is not going to do anything outside of truth, righteousness, and true morality, is it? Is it wrong for God to send somebody to hell? No. It would be wrong for somebody to send somebody to heaven that should have been in hell. And I guarantee you He's not going to do it. You know why He didn't allow Adam and Eve to live forever in sin? What did He do to keep that from happening? Remember what He did in the Garden of Eden?
Kicked them out of the garden.
He kicked them out of the garden and took away the right from the tree of life because He didn't want them to live forever in hell. Because it would have been hell. Living in separation from God forever. That would be hell, and that is hell. Separated from God. The Greek word for death is necros, for dead bodies. But for separated and away from God, it is thanatos. Thanatos means double dead. It means your body's dead and your spirit is separated from God. But dead bodies still live. Did you know that? It's a horrible thing. I remember 20-something years ago I preached on hell, and Hernando was saved. It just scared him to death, didn't it, brother? Yeah. He came forward and was saved, and he wanted to be baptized, and he wanted to follow his Lord as a Christian. And all of that is here in this. But God gives you the right to make these choices because you're sovereign. He made you a sovereign being. You're not robots. Now, if God had made robots when you were saved, He would have no problem. We'd never have to preach a sermon on giving, brother. It wouldn't have to happen. Did you know that? You were robots. Now, when you're lost, you do whatever you want with your body and everything, and you answer for it in the end. You're sovereign, all right. But when you're saved, you're born again. Sometimes do we get off on the wrong path? Yes, we do. We can be morally unsound. God corrects us and puts us in place. We can be Scrooges. And we can never have anything. Because God can take it away from us from any moment because we don't give Him what's His. And God does that sometimes, doesn't He? What are you going to give for your health if you're the richest man in the world?
What are you going to give to your heart?
What are you going to give for your health?
Oh, for your health.
To buy it. If you're the richest man in the world. You give everything you've got. I talked to a man on the ham radio the other day, and he had a heart transplant. What's scary to think about that? That's a real scary thing, you know, to me. A heart transplant. Lung transplants and things like that. This is real serious stuff. Liver transplant like Brother Levy's had over there.
You know, Queen Victoria.
And then you live in fear, huh, brother? You know who you got to depend upon? The Lord. This guy that had this heart transplant, he had money. His insurance was paying for a lot of it and everything else, and the guy asked him, well, you know, you got this big motor home, you got a yacht, you got this beautiful home, and all this stuff that you got. He said, what are you going to do if the insurance doesn't pay off? He said, I'll sell everything I have, and I'll move in my motor home, or I'll buy a cheap trailer, because he said, I'll tell you what, this is absolute dire necessity. If I don't do it, I'm dead. He said, what is your life worth? He said, everything.
Queen Victoria said on her deathbed that she would give all the riches of the British Empire for 2 minutes. You know,
It don't happen. You can't buy it. You can't buy it. Howard Hughes was one of the richest men in the world. He was what they call obsessive-compulsive disorder. He was an obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. It showed up in his early life, and he was a perfectionist and everything, and in the movies that he did, it was absolute perfection. He just couldn't stand for anything less than perfection. Then all of a sudden it started affecting his eating and his relationship with women. He didn't want a woman touching him no more because they had germs. And he was afraid to eat any food. I mean, he could go to the finest restaurant in the world And he was afraid to eat their food. So he got his own chef, and he'd only eat the heart of the lettuce because nothing else could touch it right in the middle. That's kind of protected down in the heart of his lettuce. And he just went array. And people took advantage of him, healthcare professionals and everything. His life was an absolute catastrophe. There was a problem there. There was a disorder, but there was a disorder in who he loved, who he focused his world upon was not God, but upon himself. Now, God has created everything and He sustains everything. And in Colossians, the first chapter, we find out who the Creator God was. Who is He? Who did all this creating business? Jehovah. Elohim. What does the word Jehovah Elohim mean? Jehovah Elohim. Jehovah means He who shall become. Elohim. We looked at that word on the board here a while back. El is God, isn't it? Haya. That means the sustainer and the creator. And Im on the end of that. What does that Im mean? Plural. Three or more. There's singular. There is dual in Greek and Hebrew. And there is plural. All right? Three or more. So we have a triune God, don't we? Now that triune God is the Creator. Somebody turn to me to Genesis, the first chapter, for me, please. And read some of that. Anybody got a Bible? I want you to read it in Hebrew now. All right. Who's got that? Who's the fastest?
Genesis what, Jim?
Genesis, the first chapter.
I got it.
And the first verse. Read it for me, Bill.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
All right, verse 2.
The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters.
All right. Let me go back and correct that from Hebrew now. In beginnings, Elohim created and brought to a finished product the Hashemayim, the heavens. That Im on the end of that? What does that mean? The plural heavens. All right. We had haaretz, end of the earth. The earth. All right. The hera, the earth. God created the heavens and everything in the heavens and the earth. And then it says in verse 2, and the earth, she became formless and void. And then what does verse 3 say? What does that say then?
Then God said, let there be light.
No, 3. Verse 3. Oh, 3. Finish the end of verse 2.
God was hovering over the face of the water.
Okay, in the original language it says Spirit God. Spirit God. Who is Spirit God? Is He God? He's God, yes. That's Spirit God. You're made in the image of God, aren't you? You're made in the image of God, so you have Spirit in you, don't you? And when you're born again, that Spirit of God lives in you, and that Spirit's born again in you. And then you have the Spirit of God in you. Forever, by the way. All right? Now this Spirit God is doing what there? He is brooding over the faces, El Panay, the faces of the deep. All right? He was brooding. He was sad. Brooding means what? To think over, to sad. He's going to reconstruct the destruction that has happened to the earth. Spirit God did. Now God created the heavens and the earth. Something happened to it. And then in the Colossians, the first chapter, we find out that everything that was created and everything that is held into being is done by the Son, Jehovah.
The face of waters, the deep waters is the hell.
The faces of the deep, of the waters and the earth. It's all of it, the faces of all of the deep.
That's equal to hell.
Oh, no, it wasn't talking about hell. It's just the faces of this destructed earth. Okay? That's what it's talking about. Okay, the faces of the deep. This room has 4 faces. If you want to look at top and bottom, it's got 6. Okay? That's a face, 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 and that's a face. All right? And that's the way you think in Hebrew. Okay, the faces of the deep. The surface of the water, the deep, everything in between the surface and all the deep, the surface of the earth and everything from there on down to the bottom of the earth. And even the faces of the outside cosmos. All right? Now God held all these things together. Now all of this is His. But God decided on the 6th day. And what is the number of man in the Bible? 6. You know, there are colors that mean things in the Bible. There are metals that mean things in the Bible. There are numbers that mean things. That's what we call the numbers in Scripture, or Bible numerics. Numerology. On the 6th day, God created man, and He made him sovereign, and He made him to be a recipient of His love and of Himself. It says, God formed man as He formed the dust of the earth and breathed into him the breathings of lives. Plural, again. The breathings of lives. And He loved man so much that He shared everything that you see. You walk out at night time and all the heavens of the earth, all the heavens and all the planets out there are God's. You know what? If you're a child of God, one of these days you will get to wander around out there all over. You will be busy. You'll be on vacation for how long? Eternity? You know, how many like to travel? God's going to share that with you. He's going to share it with you. He's going to share all of His whole universe with you because He loves you. All right? And He sustains all of this stuff. In the meanwhile, He gives us some a trial period. And that trial period figures out what we're going to do in eternity. All right? First of all, you need to be saved. And then after you're saved, where are you going to be in a relationship with God in eternity? Things aren't going to be all the same there. A lot of it depends upon your sovereign will. It does. Where are you going to be? Way back in the back or up front in the front seat. It makes a lot of difference on what you do right now. A lot of it. And one of those things is what? Being a tightwad. I mean, you will see somebody that's totally morally sound. They're intellectually all right. And what did we just say a while ago? There's a triune balance in Christian life. What was it?
Emotional, intellectual, and moral.
That's right. Now here we go. Where does this greed come from? Why won't we give God His stuff? Where does it come from? What part of the human structure does that come from?
Emotion, selfishness.
Well, it's in the intellect.
Sin.
We know it's not in the spirit, because that spirit's been born again, all right? That's the one that you have a war with. Intellectually and physically. The body wants stuff, doesn't it? The body likes food. The body likes good clothes. Is there anything wrong with eating food and having nice clothes and having a house over your head or anything with a roof over your head? There's nothing wrong with those things. And pay your bills. There's nothing wrong with any of those things, is there? But I can't have this if I tithe. I can't go on this trip. I can't do this. I can't do that. If I tithe, I can't afford to tithe. And I just can't afford to do it. I'm saved and I love God and I'm really, there's nothing wrong with me morally. I don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend outside of marriage or any of this kind of stuff. I'm not committing any illicit affairs. I don't beat my wife. I don't beat my kids. I don't beat up my husband. And I'm a Sunday school teacher. But I can't afford to tithe. Have you ever... At one time, I've taught preachers all my life. And this one preacher, I loved him dearly. And I was his mentor. And he came up to me, and I was working on his car one day because I'm a good mechanic. And I like doing mechanic things, and his car wouldn't run. And he had a hard time with it, and we drove it into my yard over there, and I put points and plugs and spark plugs in the thing, and wires, and condenser and distributor cap, and all this kind of stuff, because he wanted to go preach someplace. And as we were talking there, he told me that he could not afford to tithe. If he would tithe, he could afford to have somebody else fix that car. Did you know that? And he said, I really try to preach. He said, I know that I should be tithing, but he said, once I become a pastor, I'm going to tithe. What if every church member did that? Once I become a deacon, I'll tithe. Once I become a pastor, I'll tithe. Once I become a Sunday school teacher, I'll tithe. Well, that would sure make things all messed up, wouldn't it? The church building would fall apart. Wouldn't have a church building. Am I doing all right with this lesson?
The intellect plays a part in that. Because we read in the Bible when we've robbed God, stolen from God. And it says
Malachi. All right, we are to imitate God. I'll give this thing to you in just a minute, Brother Drake. Okay. We cannot imitate His power. We cannot imitate His knowledge. We cannot imitate His... we can imitate His generosity. Giving is the expression of love. It sure is. God shared the whole universe with us. He shared it all. And He expects us to give a tenth of that back to Him. You can just trace that all the way back to Abraham. I don't know how far back it goes. Probably even Adam. It doesn't tell us that, but there's a statute there somewhere. Then the last thing it says here, giving prepares us for eternity. And that's what I was talking about a few minutes ago. Giving prepares us for eternity. Are we going to be kindergartners over there, or are we going to be seminary students? Are we going to be co-administrators in God's kingdom? Or are we going to have to be taught something because we didn't learn it? Sometimes it's old story. How many times does God have to send you around the mountain before you get the lesson? How many times do we have to go through the bad stuff, the hard life, before we get the gist of the lesson? Thank you for your attention. God bless you. And give. And if you need to fill out those things in the classroom, brother, I need you to fill out something here. I think we're supposed to do this. Oh, you got those things? You got them already? All right. Thank you, brother. Okay. We're written to Maryland. Would she get them? Would you get through with them? Yep, I'm finished, brother. It's yours. Okay. I think it's...
Well, good morning. Have you had a chance to look over this week's prayer sheet? Actually from last week? Too much rain? No.
Did anybody hear how much rain we got, by the way?
It was a record, actually.
I think so.
It said, I can't remember numbers, but I just heard the record-setting number yesterday.
Well, it looked like we got 2 inches out there where we were, at least that much. It's just totally flooded. It's,
It's still not enough because we haven't had no rain.
well, no, it'll take a long time to get it, but we couldn't have any more than what we got in one time because we'd have problems.
So you can walk into it.
Things falling over.
So you can practically walk into it and go.
Yeah.
Okay, can we...